She swore she'd marry him when the war was over. He swore he'd protect her until the end. Then the war ended, and it was his own companions who chained him in the dark and asked him to die. But let's start from the beginning. Irina all of a sudden says that once the war against the Demon Lord's army is over, she wants Chrome to marry her. The instant she hears herself, Irina panics and apologizes to Chrome, then even to herself for saying it out loud while he stands there frozen. As Chrome reels from the confession, he reminds himself that death always shadows their battles, and Irina starts to grasp why he hesitates. Then Chrome steps closer and quietly tells Irina he feels the same way. Irina right away asks him to marry her when the fighting ends, certain they will survive no matter what. Chrome lets himself imagine a peaceful future where he and Irina make it through and finally live happily together. That fragile vision is shattered when a monstrous enemy lunges in and sneers for the hero and his companions to die. Irina reacts at once, raising a barrier and invoking Holy Shield to stop the incoming blow. Her shield catches the strike head-on as the battlefield explodes with impact. Then another enemy roars that they are not to be forgotten, announcing yet another threat joining the assault. Chrome and his allies surge forward as a swordsman collides with the serpent-like monster, and another fighter dives in from above. Their companions tell Chrome to move on their signal and match the timing exactly, and he gives a sharp confirmation. Chrome calls out to Yuno, and the others release Firestorm together as Yuno answers that he's ready. A command rings out for the Holy Sword Weiss to destroy the evil before them. Yuno draws Weiss and braces himself as the attack hurtles straight toward him. Carried by the force of the moment, Yuno tells himself they really pulled it off. Yuno smiles and says the victory was possible because Chrome and everyone else supported him, calling Chrome his best friend and the only other survivor among this world's 7 heroes. The narration reveals that the Demon Lord was resurrected 3 years earlier, and with his 13 generals he nearly drove half the world to ruin before God chose 7 heroes from Earth to push back with their companions. One member of the heroes' party is introduced as the Vanguard, Riat. The remaining companions are introduced as Margot, the Knight among Knights, and Farah, the Swordswoman. The narration identifies Irina as someone close to Chrome and Valeri the Sage as the one who taught him magic. The narration finally names him Chrome Walker. Chrome reveals that he too was one of those chosen to join the heroes' party as the group is shown together. Night settles quietly over the house as the scene leaves the battlefield behind. Chrome walks down the hall and wonders if Irina is still awake. He remembers they are supposed to leave tomorrow with one of the Demon Lord Army's 13 generals. Then Chrome all of a sudden hears Irina's voice and thinks she should already be back asleep. He turns toward an open doorway and finds Irina standing there with Yuno, leaving him stunned. Irina says she also wanted to see Yuno, and Chrome can only stare in confusion. As he looks at them together, Chrome cannot stop wondering why Irina is standing outside Yuno's room. Chrome tells himself not to leap to conclusions and tries to believe he is imagining it. Even as he insists he is not trying to doubt them, Chrome decides he has to check, reminding himself that he cares deeply for Irina. From beyond the doorway, he hears a reply declaring love for the hero too, and the moment instantly turns worse. The words lock Chrome in place, and all he can manage is a stunned sound. As he keeps staring at the scene, Chrome can only wonder what is happening between them. Standing outside the door, he is bombarded by repeated words of love and admiration from inside, and the atmosphere grows painfully unbearable. The next day, Chrome looks so wrecked that his companions ask if he is pale or feeling sick. Chrome waves it off and says it is nothing, claiming he just could not sleep at all last night. Watching the group act as usual, Chrome forces himself to stay steady and tells himself to get it together. The knight loudly announces that they really will be facing Franculas, while the others react around him. Chrome declares that he will protect everyone and promises they will win. Then, in the very next instant, chains violently wrap around him, and the sudden restraint shocks him to the core. Chrome can only breathe sharply in confusion as he tries to grasp what is happening. He collapses in agony as pain rips through his entire body, while someone identifies the attack as the forbidden art known as Chains of Despair. A dark figure explains that anger, pain, hatred, despair, and every other negative emotion will draw out latent power and strengthen the hero. As Chrome looks up in disbelief, he is told the hero needs more power, and that is why the rite begins with him. Bound by chains and darkness, Chrome is coldly told that they are sorry, but he has been chosen as the sacrifice. Chrome can only ask in numbed disbelief why it has to be him. He is then told that everyone agreed to this, and that his sacrifice is meant to strengthen the hero. Overwhelmed and breaking apart, Chrome realizes everyone just wants to survive, and it feels like the life inside him is being drained away. As Chrome lies there crushed by pain, the voice explains that if he keeps cursing and suffering, he will die, and that anger, pain, hatred, despair, and every other dark emotion will deepen his darkness and let the hero draw even more power from the light. Shadowed figures coldly tell him to curse them all, insisting that his resentment will only make the hero stronger. The girl remains expressionless while the man behind her says nothing, making the weight of the decision even colder. One of them quietly tells him not to worry, because he will make her happy. As the woman stands close to the man, she apologizes to Chrome. A final voice tells Chrome that he will not be forgotten. Watching from a distance while the others stand close together, Chrome stares ahead in disbelief as the emotional gulf between them becomes impossible to ignore. Chrome reflects that he had cared for Irina for a long time and forced himself to learn magic so he could protect her. He remembers that, as an orphan, he had prayed for the joy of sharing his life with a family, and that what he found here had truly become his family. Lying alone under the night sky, Chrome bitterly realizes he was the only one who ever believed that bond was real. Chrome notices the strange chains binding him and is right away unnerved by them. He realizes the chains are made of magical energy rather than actual metal, making the restraint feel even more unnatural. He recalls Valfoy calling them the forbidden chains of despair, and the memory drives home how dire this really is. In the darkness, a pack of sword wolves emerges from the forest and closes in on him. Seeing the large pack of monsters, Chrome desperately tries to cast Fireball in panic. His face drains of color when he realizes his magic power is gone, and the shock nearly makes him scream. As the beasts encircle him, Chrome bitterly reflects that he was betrayed and thrown away by the people he trusted, only to be left here to die. While the wolves lunge and he struggles in terror, he wonders where everything in his life went wrong. Faced with certain death, Chrome can only think that this cannot be real. Breaking down completely, he cries that he does not want to die and cannot accept dying in a place like this. Staring death in the face, Chrome desperately insists that he still wants to live and cannot end here. A strange system-like presence responds that the user's despair and hatred have finally met the requirements. As Chrome remains restrained, the voice announces that the rite has reached 70% and that the activation conditions for Darkness's powers have been fulfilled. It then states that he has received the EX skill called Fixed Damage. Hearing an unfamiliar woman's voice, Chrome is bewildered and the voice asks whether he wants to activate the skill. Though he has no idea what is happening, Chrome wonders if this power could at least drive the wolves back. The system confirms his will and declares that the EX skill Fixed Damage will now be executed. In the next instant, the magical restraints around Chrome shatter as the skill activates around him. The wolves are struck by the effect, while the voice explains that every 3 seconds all enemies within a 10-meter radius will suffer 1 point of fixed damage, and that the effect will persist continuously. As the sword wolves begin to suffer, another voice informs Chrome that he has safely awakened as the host. The voice asks who it is, then answers that it is the darkness dwelling within Chrome. As Chrome listens in confusion, the voice explains that he inherited darkness while light went to the hero group, and that the rite gave birth to both light and darkness. The presence tells him he has only just awakened to this power, and that his anger, hatred, and even despair will nurture the darkness and make him stronger. Chrome grits his teeth, unable to fully make sense of what the voice is saying. With a mocking laugh, the voice remarks that Chrome seems to possess an unusually high caliber of darkness. As Chrome endures the pain, his anger, hatred, and despair surge together, and the voice announces that the EX skill Fixed Damage has risen from 1 to 2. Looking at the enemies before him, Chrome thinks of those who betrayed him, and the voice notes that if that is the case, then he has plenty of experience with such feelings as the damage rises from 2 to 3. Chrome's thoughts turn to Yuno, Irina, and all the others, and he vows revenge because they showed him no mercy. As he resolves to stay alive until that vow is fulfilled and declares that he will fight, the voice reports that the damage has increased again, from 4 to 5. Barely able to stay on his feet, Chrome resolves to see this through no matter what. Chrome declares that he will cling to his hatred for as long as it takes. 2 years pass. In a neighboring town, people report that demons have been spotted and fear that their own city may be next. Others say the world is still dangerous even after the Demon Lord's fall, but insist the hero and his companions will surely destroy the remaining forces of the Demon Lord's army. Hearing that this is the city of those who defeated the Demon Lord, she thinks that if things get bad, the governor or the city chief should deal with it. As she walks along the wall, a suspicious sound makes her stop and turn toward it. A swordswoman corners 2 men and tells them they have nowhere left to run. The men desperately tell her not to be so cold and instead try to pressure her, turning the scene ugly. She angrily shuts them down and demands to know who would ever do something like that with them. Even as the men recoil and collapse in fear, someone remarks that she is unexpectedly strong-willed. One of the men sneers that they had also ruined her older sister's life, making the scene even more disturbing. He adds that after being kept under Duke Riat's control for so long, her sister had eventually given up. With a mocking laugh, he says her sister no longer seemed like herself at all. The swordswoman explodes in fury and demands to know how they dare speak of her sister that way. Noticing how drained she is, one man all of a sudden lunges and taunts that she cannot do anything in her current state, knocking her back as she cries out. As she hits the ground, another says they should take her to the Duke after finishing with her, making the moment even uglier. Before they can go any further, a sharp new voice orders the scum to get away from that woman, freezing the men in place. The men look up in confusion, then react in disbelief when they spot a lone figure standing above them. The newcomer steps forward as the men angrily demand to know who he is and whether he realizes whose men he is challenging. The swordswoman looks up from the ground in shock, while the men keep shouting at the newcomer. The newcomer coldly says they are subordinates of Duke Riat and reminds them that the man was once a member of the hero's party. As the thugs recoil in confusion, he writes them off as the same breed of lowlife as that man. The scene becomes too charged to stay calm in. In the very next instant, the mocking man is cut down so fast, the others barely see it happen. The remaining men stare at the fallen body in shock, then panic as they realize he already struck. The swordswoman watches in stunned silence as 2 more men are cut down at once, their screams ripping through the air. In a flash, every attacker crumples before her, and only the newcomer remains standing over them with crushing force. Still shaken, the swordswoman looks up at him and can only stammer as she tries to ask who he is. He turns toward her, and she hesitantly starts to ask if he is who she thinks he is. Lying weakly on the ground, she quietly thanks him for saving her. The swordswoman gathers herself and introduces herself as Shea. When he gives his name as Chrome, she repeats it in surprise as he casually tells her to just call him Chrome. She hesitantly asks if the way he killed those soldiers was magic, and he brushes it off as something like that. As he starts to walk away, she urgently calls out for him to stop. Pushing past her nerves, Shea asks for his help and pleads with him to hear her out. The story shifts back 2 years, explaining that hero Yuno and his companions defeated the Demon Lord with the Holy Sword. It explains that 6 of those heroes gained status, honor, wealth, and power, while Yuno and his party were hailed across the world as the strongest among the 7 heroes. Yet even as the world basks in prosperity, it is revealed that Duke Riat, the ruler of this city, was once one of the heroes' party. At the mention of Riat, a memory resurfaces of a man jeering that Riat would be king one day while declaring that Yuno would never reach his goal. Realizing the link, he identifies that man as the one connected to Riat. Shea begins her story by asking if he can understand that she once had an older sister. Holding down her emotions, she reveals that she once had an older sister. She explains that her sister was intelligent, kind, and highly skilled with a sword, and that Riat recognized her talent and made her captain of his knights. She says that one day, Riat began crushing his people with heavy taxes. She explains that her sister confronted Riat about it, only to provoke his wrath. Shea says Riat and his men abused her sister, and in the end, they killed her. She adds that after their parents died young, that older sister had taken it upon herself to raise her. Remembering those days, she says her sister was gentle and brave, and that she had always been proud to be her sister. The memory turns horrific as her sister's ruined face appears beside Shea's broken, furious expression. Overwhelmed by grief and rage, Shea clutches her sister's body as her scream tears through the memory. Through tears and fury, Shea swears that she will never forgive Riat. Her grief hardens into murderous hatred as she declares that she will kill him. Chrome asks what exactly she wants from him. Shea says she is planning to take revenge on Duke Riat. She directly asks Chrome to help her avenge her sister's death. Chrome realizes she is asking one of the men who saved the world to get involved. Shea warns that Riat is powerful and protected by many soldiers. She adds that he is also a fierce war veteran, so she cannot fight him head-on. Even so, she insists that with the power Chrome just showed, and with Chrome-sama's help, he should be able to stand against Riat despite his status. She promises to repay him with whatever he wants in return. Shea bows her head and vows that even if it takes years, or a lifetime, she will see her revenge through. Her hatred is laid bare as her grief hardens into a true and unwavering thirst for revenge. Chrome calmly agrees, leaving Shea stunned as she apologizes for making such a sudden request. When Chrome repeats that he already said he would help, Shea can barely process how easily he agreed. Shea panics and reminds him that Riat is a duke and a member of the strongest heroes party, while Chrome dryly points out that she was the one who asked and wonders if he was supposed to refuse, leaving her flustered and grateful. Shea hesitates under his gaze, and when Chrome asks what it is, she nervously struggles to say what is really on her mind. The moment turns awkward as Shea anxiously asks whether he plans to demand something improper in return. Embarrassed and wary, Shea reveals that her sister taught her men are like animals who always try to take advantage of women. Chrome pushes back on that harsh belief and says not all men are like that, calling her view of men extremely biased. Relieved by his answer, Shea silently thanks her sister for watching over her as the tension finally loosens. Shea awkwardly apologizes for what she just implied, then quietly admits she was being unfair. Chrome sets that aside and explains that Riat has grown arrogant in his power, was already overconfident to begin with, and now even possesses the overwhelming strength of a great lord. Shea warns that if commoners retaliate against a great lord, Riat will likely use it as an excuse to unleash soldiers on them. Chrome says that is exactly what they want, because Riat should come out and show himself. Startled, Shea realizes Chrome is talking about bait, and she right away says that if luring him out is the best option, then she will be the bait. Shea then hesitates and points out that Riat had been after her from the very beginning. She adds that Chrome does not look well at all, calling him Chrome-sama as she worries about his condition. Chrome admits that after being bound by the forbidden chains of despair, both his magic and his body began rapidly deteriorating. He continues that his limbs became so weak that even walking is difficult and running is out of the question, but he still trails off as if there is more. As Shea reacts in surprise, Chrome cuts her off and tells her there is no need for her to do that. Shea sees a girl clutch her chest and declare that she is going to kill them. Against the backdrop of the castle, that vow sharpens as she resolves to do it as quickly and directly as possible. Elsewhere, a bottle shatters as a man drunkenly demands more alcohol right away. A frightened maid apologizes, but the abusive man cuts her off at once and fires her. He then asks whether the man who killed his subordinates in the town below the castle has been found, and his servant nervously admits the target is still missing. Smirking under the tension, he orders them to search harder and warns that if the culprit escapes, he will lose space. As he drinks and mutters in irritation, another servant appears to be dragged away in the background, showing just how tense the room has become. The discomfort between them rises without warning. The man grabs the terrified maid and crudely praises her appearance, saying he will keep her close, while she desperately begs to be spared and the moment turns deeply ugly. Leaning in with a threatening grin, he warns her about the cost of opposing him and says he will treat her well only if she obeys. A guard rushes in and urgently calls for Riat-sama, interrupting the abusive man mid-act. The man complains that he was just getting to the good part, while the frightened maid can only stare as the sickening scene hangs in the air. Two hooded figures appear, and one of them bluntly announces that there are intruders. Guards charge down the hall and order the intruders to stop right there, calling them freaks. The guards demand to know who they are, warn that no mercy will be shown, and threaten to tear them to pieces. One of the intruders narrows a sharp gaze, signaling an instant counterattack. In an instant, the guards are cut down and cry out in pain as the two cloaked figures stand amid the wreckage. Seeing the result, one of the intruders remarks that it is incredible. Shea is stunned that they are actually entering through the front door, while Chrome coldly warns that the intruders will not get away with this. With a smug grin, the man vows to make them regret the sin of trespassing on his land. A hooded girl glares ahead and swears to Riat that she will avenge her sister. The smug man laughs and realizes the intruder is not Sia. He mocks her for looking like her sister while being rude, then threatens to make things even worse in front of the person beside her. A subordinate urgently reports to Riat-sama about the intruders, but Riat says he already knows. Riat activates Barrier Crest and confidently declares that whatever tricks they are using will not work on him. The treasure is explained as a barrier that nullifies irregular circumstances and can endure up to 30,000 damage. The two hooded intruders stand at a distance as it is noted they are 20 meters away and that the barrier can even withstand Demon Lord class spells. Riat is warned not to underestimate the enemy, since even with sealing spells he is still a top-class warrior who can handle the rest with his sword. The barrier all of a sudden registers 9,999 damage taken, and it is stated that the crest will break once its total capacity of 20,001 is exhausted. Riat is left staring in shock, unable to comprehend what just happened. Riat is baffled that neither intruder has made a single unusual move, and he starts questioning what has been happening from the very start. He is shaken to the core as he realizes the barrier lost 9,999 points in a single instant. As panic surges, he demands to know what the intruders are and who they really are. The hooded girl answers with a cold warning. The crest reports that 9,999 damage points have been taken and only 10,002 remain before the barrier breaks, leaving Riat stunned and lost. A man beside the hooded girl stares in disbelief and realizes that the one before him is Chrome. The hooded girl all of a sudden shouts Riat's name with fierce hatred. The pressure hits him at once, and Riat recoils in terror as he stumbles backward. The hooded girl tells him he seems to have forgotten a former comrade, then says she is glad he still remembers Riat. Riat jerks in shock as something at his chest snaps apart, and the barrier's damage can no longer be denied. The hooded intruder remarks that the barrier crest really did break, calls it a top-class defensive treasure, and coldly says its loss is a shame as Riat panics that this cannot be real. Riat clutches his chest and insists there is no way the barrier crest could have shattered so all of a sudden, but the intruder says he is about to explain exactly how it happened. The hooded figure reveals that his power inflicts fixed damage on targets within his surroundings, while the girl behind him watches in silence. Riat, drenched in sweat, repeats the words fixed damage in disbelief, and the intruder confirms that is correct. The hooded man states that the damage he is dealing right now is permanently set at 9999. As Riat reels on the floor, the intruder explains that this is an area skill, and the moment Riat stepped into a 10-meter radius, he was forced to take fixed damage of 9099. The explanation hits both listeners at once, and they react in open shock at the sheer number of 9,999 damage points. With a faint, confident smile, the hooded man wonders whether such a mighty warrior from the hero's party can really survive this. Riat snaps that this is absurd, and cries that 9,999 damage is enough to nearly kill even a Demon King's executive class fighter, then admits in terror that he will die for sure. Riat stays collapsed in the distance as the hooded intruder advances toward him one deliberate step at a time. The hooded man warns Riat to fear every single step he takes. He repeats that the damage from his skill is fixed at 9,099. He explains that the instant anyone enters the range of his skill, death is certain. He reveals that the Demon Ceiling Crest had a 20-meter effective range, but once it entered the radius of his fixed damage skill, it began taking damage on its own. As he steps forward, Riat desperately tells him to stay away, but the intruder declares that it no longer matters because the broken crest means Riat cannot defend himself anymore. Riat screams for him to stay back, but his panic only worsens. Nearby guards finally react in confusion and demand to know what everyone is doing. Riat shouts at them to shoot the intruder right away. The guards draw their bows at once and move to protect the Duke. Arrows fly toward the hooded man and the girl beside him, and the hall erupts with sudden violence. As the arrows close in, the hooded man calmly tells Shea to stay close to him and not move, and she quickly agrees. He faces the attack without flinching, his stare sharpening as the impact rushes in around him. The nearby guards freeze in shock, unable to understand what they are seeing. The hooded man reminds them again that his skill damages any target within 10 meters and says it is not limited to living things. He explains that anything trying to hurt him becomes a target, whether it is a monster, an arrow, or even a magic attack. Riat panics and orders all the soldiers to rush the hooded man with their swords, shouting for them to do whatever it takes to protect him. The guards hesitate and protest that getting close to him would mean certain death. Riat flies into a rage at their defiance, furious that they would dare oppose him now. The hooded man coldly observes that Riat's soldiers value their own lives more than their loyalty to him. As the intruder keeps advancing, Riat retreats in terror and begs him to stop. Riat desperately insists that he endured enormous hardship to defeat the Demon Lord and earned his status and wealth through that victory. Sweating and shaking, Riat panics and refuses to accept that this is how everything ends for him. As Chrome closes in, Riat is reminded of the man who once fought 100 demons with only his sword and stood as the vanguard of the hero's party. Overwhelmed, Riat bows and pleads for mercy, calling Chrome one of the great warriors whose absolute power helped defeat the Demon Lord. In total panic, Riat begs Chrome again and again to forgive him and spare his life. Chrome looks down at him coldly and remarks that Riat is begging for his life now. Shea watches in shock as Riat claims he had always seen Chrome as a true companion. Riat adds that he believed they were friends. A memory of the old party surfaces as Riat insists they all mattered to him, says he would have given his life to protect any of them, and claims defeating the Demon Lord and saving the world was his ultimate goal. Chrome walks on in silence while Riat bitterly calls saving the world a cruel joke and insists he still tried to protect his close friends no matter the cost. Riat insists that no matter how terrifying the demons were, he kept forcing himself forward and gathering every bit of courage he had, but his voice begins to fail. He says his hopes were crushed underfoot, his face twisting as the bitterness spills free. Riat claims that everything he treasured most was stolen from him in a single instant. He says that loss left him hollow, then hurriedly argues that he did object to the others' plan. Riat desperately explains that he never wanted any of it, that he told them he could not do something so terrible to a lifelong friend, and that Yuno and the others forced him. Chrome cuts through the excuse, saying it is too late for a convenient story like that, because while Riat may have thought he was going to die with the others, something inside him still knew he could not die there. With a cold stare, Chrome declares that he has come to settle everything here and now. Riat breaks down and begs Chrome to stop, pleading again and again for his life. As Chrome steps forward, Riat frantically insists they are friends, claims everything that happened was only an illusion, and clings to the excuse that Chrome must have been controlled. In total panic, Riat grabs his head and screams that he does not want to die while begging Chrome one last time. A memory surfaces of Riat as a former companion who had once been harsh in battle but gentle with his friends. Chrome coldly declares that the former Riat no longer exists as Riat lies broken before him. As dark force erupts around the scene, a shocked witness recoils while the final strike falls. Someone cries out that the Duke is dead and says they killed the Duke, while Chrome remains silent. Shea approaches her sister's grave and quietly addresses her as Big Sister. Shea says Chrome has avenged her. Through tears, Shea asks her sister to rest in peace now. Shea thanks Chrome for helping her and says her sister's spirit can finally be at peace, while Chrome says he hopes so too. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Shea asks how she can repay Chrome for helping her. When asked if he is leaving, Chrome says that even if helping her was only a side result, he achieved his revenge, and now that Riat is dead, he must move on to the next target. Chrome says the other members of the hero's party who betrayed him are still out there, and his journey will not end until he has taken revenge on every one of them. Shea is shaken and asks if that means he even intends to fight the hero, and Chrome confirms that he does. The remaining targets are revealed as the knight Margot, the swordswoman Farah, the sage Valeri, the saintess Irina, and the hero Yuno. With a dark expression, Chrome vows to make them all face deep fear and despair. Shea right away declares that if that is his path, then she is going with Chrome. She says she might be able to help him on his journey and repay him for aiding her as well. Chrome looks at her in surprise and asks if she truly understands what she just said. Near her sister's grave, Shea explains that she had been fully prepared to give her life fighting Riat. But because of Chrome, that sacrifice was no longer necessary, while Chrome warns that he is going after the hero's party, the strongest people in the world. Shea calmly says she wants to spend what remains of her life helping him. She adds that beyond that, she simply wants to stay by Chrome's side a little longer. Shea smiles and asks if she can really go with him, while Chrome reacts with visible surprise. Chrome admits he does not mean to be rude, but says she is a strange woman. Shea right away fires back that Chrome is not exactly normal either. Shea explains that despite how she looks, her sister trained her as a knight captain, and since she has spent so long training, he cannot expect to shake her off that easily. With a confident smile, Shea warns that even if Chrome tries to run, she will just chase after him. Chrome can only sigh in exasperation at her persistence. Shea happily agrees and thanks him, while Chrome warns that the moment things become too much for him to handle, she will have to stop following him. Shea warmly says they should have a pleasant journey together and calls out to Chrome with an easy smile. Chrome answers flatly that he does not care whether the journey is pleasant or not, as Shea watches him closely. With a dark expression, Chrome states that this is a journey of revenge, and the path they walk will be marked by bloodshed. Shea asks whether he has already decided on their next destination, and Chrome confirms that he has. Chrome turns ahead and reveals that their next target has already been chosen. Elsewhere, someone notices something is wrong as an oracle bird arrives with urgent news. The report reaches a high-ranking priestess, and she is told that the oracle has shown a glimpse of past and future events. She is shaken and insists that the person in question should already be dead, while the revelation leaves her disturbed and unable to dismiss it. In her distress, she calls on Yuno and begs him to protect her. Yuno right away reassures her and tells her to rest easy. With full confidence, Yuno declares that he is the strongest man alive and says that as the Holy Sword hero he will protect her. A grim destination is finally named as the Kingdom of Larvan. The narration identifies Larvan as a kingdom where one of the high priestesses is expected to rise soon as a grand priestess. Chrome finally reveals his target, the high priestess herself, Saintess Irina. Irina calmly tells the man she is willing to go with him. The supreme priest says that if it is truly her wish, he cannot refuse, and the atmosphere becomes deeply uncomfortable. Irina coldly thanks the supreme priest while inwardly recoiling in disgust. A stunned young man calls out to Irina and demands to know if she was with that man. Irina stays seated as another voice sharply rebukes the outburst, calling it disgraceful to address her that way. The enraged intruder is revealed to be Saint Knight Vance. Irina notes that Vance has barged into the room where she and the supreme priest were alone, then pointedly turns to the supreme priest for help. The situation is framed as one-sided obsession, claiming Vance has chased Irina for years and only lost control because she rejected him. Vance refuses to accept it and furiously demands to know why Irina is with another man after what they supposedly went through not long ago. Vance angrily declares that Irina belongs with him and orders Chrome to disappear, leaving Chrome stunned by the words coming out of his mouth. The supreme priest asserts his authority and declares that he and Irina are already bound together, insisting no one has the right to intrude on their future. Vance lashes out, demanding to know if Irina was only playing with his feelings, bitterly bringing up the troubling things she once said to him and ordering Chrome not to interfere. Chrome can only watch in disgust, silently branding Vance an utter fool. Irina coldly reflects that men are easy to manipulate, then makes it clear that just because she misled Vance once or twice, he was a fool to think she saw him as anything special. She explains that her flawless public image as a member of the hero's party made her beloved, and that popularity will soon lift her to the seat of the next Supreme Priestess. Irina reveals she needed one final push, so she let the Supreme Priest use the situation to elevate her status, making the whole scene even more revolting. Vance steals himself and says he does not care if it means betraying his companion, you know. Irina stares ahead with icy resolve and vows to seize this chance by any means necessary. She declares that she will keep climbing no matter what stands in her way. Irina vows to rise all the way to the very summit of power in this world. In a graveyard echoing with screams and curses, Chrome all of a sudden hears someone impossibly call out to him and ask if he can hear her. Chrome freezes in confusion and wonders what is happening. The air swells with countless voices of pain, resentment, and hatred, while one presence warns that what he is hearing is pure evil, something unforgivable. Chrome exhales sharply as the voice keeps calling his name. A shadowy woman appears before him in the middle of the haunting scene. Chrome faces the figure and demands to know who she is, while she starts to answer that she is someone important. The mysterious woman tells Chrome he has done well so far, says this is as close as they can come for now, and promises they will meet very soon. She adds that her name will be revealed when the time comes, and Chrome jolts awake as the vision shatters. Back in reality, Shea notices he is awake and calls out to Chrome in concern. Shea sees that Chrome still looks unsettled and asks what kind of dream he had, but Chrome brushes it off and says it was nothing. In an awkward attempt to respond, Shea all of a sudden offers to help him, making the moment painfully tense. The interaction turns into something neither wanted. Chrome points out that despite what she is saying, she still looks completely tense, and Shea hurriedly apologizes, saying she only jumped to conclusions. Chrome realizes from Shea's face that the reaction is genuine, while she weakly tries to laugh it off as a joke. As Shea slowly settles after finally taking revenge, Chrome asks how she feels now that it is over. Shea admits she still does not really understand her own feelings yet. She says that if she is honest, it feels like a weight has been lifted from her chest, and while she is ready to keep traveling, she still does not know if she can move on with her life. Chrome quietly accepts her answer and says he understands. Shea hesitates, then respectfully calls out to Chrome and asks if something would be alright. Shea asks Chrome to tell her what happened between him and the rest of the hero's party. Caught off guard, Chrome asks what she means, and Shea says that maybe talking about it might ease his mind. Chrome dryly says it is not exactly a pleasant story to hear. Shaken and distressed, Shea asks whether those people really did all those horrible things to Chrome. Chrome tells her that whether she believes him is up to her, and says she can leave his side whenever she wants. Chrome adds that he intended to take his revenge alone from the very beginning, reminding her that she has no obligation to follow him. In the stillness of the forest, Shea answers that Chrome already saved her once. Chrome extends his hand, and Shea vows that she will repay that kindness with her life. She takes his hand and seals that resolve with a deeply respectful gesture. With a steady smile, Shea tells Chrome that she believes him. A strange voice remarks that this is the first person Chrome has trusted since obtaining darkness. Startled, Shea realizes she can hear a voice, and Chrome explains that it is the power dwelling inside him. Chrome says he simply calls that power darkness, and it points out that even with the fixed damage skill, his physical abilities are still suppressed by the curse. The voice explains that Shea's swordsmanship could compensate for that weakness, but warns that her current strength is still nowhere near enough to face most of the hero's party. Shea stiffens in confusion and blurts out that the voice talks far too much. The voice then offers to grant Shea more power, and Chrome repeats it back, making sure he heard correctly. Darkness explains that because Chrome is bound by the forbidden chains of despair, he cannot use anything except fixed damage. It adds that if Chrome transfers any of his sealed skills to Shea, she should be able to wield them in his place. Chrome asks whether that is really possible, and Darkness replies that it is, as long as the person has been acknowledged as his partner. Shea falls silent and shakily repeats the words about being acknowledged as his partner, clearly rattled. Chrome asks if Shea is truly willing to go through with this. Shea eagerly says that she wants to be useful to Chrome. Shea declares that if this can make her stronger, she will gladly accept it. Chrome tells Darkness to give her a portion of his power, making clear that he heard her answer and accepted it. The power confirms that Chrome's will has been accepted. A system-like force activates and designates Shea Framewright's status as Chrome's familiar, leaving her startled. As the transfer begins, the air tightens and Shea struggles while cutting and acceleration are passed into her. A crest appears on Shea as the power settles inside her. Shea stares at the mark in shock and begins to grasp what just happened. Facing Chrome, Shea grips her sword as the weight of the moment settles between them. Shea raises her sword and feels dark power surge through it as her focus turns razor sharp. She tells Chrome that she can feel it, realizing that a strange power now dwells inside her sword. Darkness notes that her blade has now reached the level of a demon's sword. Chrome asks whether she wants to test that new power on their next target, if she is ready. The scene shifts to a packed public procession as a carriage and its attendants move through a cheering street. A woman is identified as Saintess Irina-sama as she appears wearing a serene smile. Shea says Irina truly looks kind and gentle, but Chrome quietly warns that it is all a facade. Shea is startled, while Chrome narrows his eyes and admits that something about this feels wrong. The tension snaps when Chrome all of a sudden recognizes her and shouts Irina's name, stunning the crowd around him. He lunges forward instantly, yelling for everyone to move as guards rush to stop him. A knight captain named Vance steps in and blocks Chrome's advance head-on. Vance demands to know why a saint knight like Chrome is making a scene, while Chrome remembers that Irina had once been deeply important to him. Chrome recalls how Irina once seemed like everything he had ever wanted, kind to all and wrapped in a fragile, innocent image. But that memory twists into fury as Chrome breaks down shouting, unable to contain his rage over who she really is. Shea runs after him and yells for him to stop, while Chrome refuses, insisting he will not let anyone take his target. Shea activates acceleration and launches forward at blinding speed to catch him. Darkness notes that Shea now looks like a red flash to human eyes and says he will aid his kin with the power of his support. Chrome coldly asks if she really thinks she can make it in time and dismisses the effort as pointless. As a hand reaches through the crowd, Chrome locks onto Irina and realizes that woman is truly standing before him. His restraint finally shatters as he roars with overwhelming fury. Chrome's memories turn painfully soft as he recalls caring for Irina completely and believing she was the only one meant for him. That sorrow detonates into rage as Chrome screams at Irina and demands to know why she betrayed him. A startled voice responds in confusion, unable to grasp what is happening. Irina appears before them in solemn silence as someone nearby notices her with alarm and respectfully calls out to her. Vance steps in from the front and demands to know why Chrome is causing such a disgraceful disturbance. Chrome shouts that he gave everything for Irina, even staining his own hands for her sake, and accuses her of throwing him away without hesitation just to become the High Priestess. As the crowd stares in disbelief and asks what he means, Chrome bitterly demands to know if he was nothing more than a tool to Irina all along. Chrome all of a sudden bursts forward at full speed, plunging the scene into instant chaos. The onlookers push back against Chrome's accusation, insisting it is impossible for a holy woman like Irina to commit such vile acts and praising her as a merciful saint loved by all. The crowd turns hostile and brands Chrome as trash, demanding to know who sent him and ordering him to leave at once. Irina steps forward and orders the crowd to stop, insisting Chrome must be under some terrible influence. She claims only something unnatural could explain why he would accuse her of such serious crimes without proof, as a voice nearby erupts at him in disbelief. With folded hands and a mournful face, Irina looks down at him and calls him a poor, pitiable soul. As Chrome reels in shock, Irina coldly introduces herself as Saintess Irina and declares that she will heal him. Chrome drops to his knees clutching his head, choking on pain and confusion as he demands to know what she has done. Frozen in alarm, Chrome can only breathe sharply and ask what she has done to him. As Chrome panics over what he has done to the saint, Irina calmly asks if he has settled down, leaving everyone else stunned. Then, someone all of a sudden offers an apology to all, snapping the crowd's attention at once. Chrome desperately insists he was only spewing nonsense about things that never happened, and swears Irina would never do anything so terrible. He even cries out to Irina that he regrets turning his blade on himself, then claims a curse drove him to disgrace the other holy knights by speaking against the saintess. A sudden slash tears through the air as Vance is cut down, and a nearby nun screams in horror. Irina stares in horror and cries out to God as panic flashes across her face. Irina catches the falling Vance and mourns over him, calling him poor Vance. Through tears, she says the least he deserved was to rest in peace. As blood spills down, Vance weakly tries to say Irina's name and begins to utter that she is his. A stunned onlooker all of a sudden realizes this is Irina's monastic magic. It is revealed to be a forbidden high-order priest spell, a mind-controlling magic that drives its victims to suicide. The hooded figure reveals that with this, Irina silenced Vance while making him look noble in the very same moment. The figure coldly declares that Vance's regrets will be avenged now. The hooded figure tells Shea they are leaving, and she answers firmly that she understands. Irina declares that she will protect Chrome, her resolve unshaken. The guards rush to shield the Saintess and warn the approaching figure not to take another step while demanding to know who it is. As Irina regains her composure and the hooded figure faces her head-on, the intruder makes it clear the real confrontation starts now. The crowd reels from Vance's death, wondering if he killed himself, while others insist he simply could not bear the disgrace of defying the Saintess and that even she was dragged down by someone like him. Confusion rips through the scene as people ask what is happening and fear that another intruder has appeared. Irina demands the intruder's identity and orders Fludo to seize the person right away. The hooded figure boldly tells them to come and take him, but says there are two things they must hear first. As the guards close in, the intruder first tells Irina not to move an inch, then orders the guards around her to fall back. He warns that if they force this, his skill may kill the guards before they even realize it. The nearby knights protest that this puts Saintess Irina in danger, but the hooded figure fires back that these men are not fanatics like the ones from Riat, and harming them would gain him nothing. Irina calmly declares that she has received an immense amount of God's blessings, so no wound will ever touch her. She adds with a faint smile that she is also a member of the hero's party, so no one has any reason to fear. Chrome reacts with sharp surprise, sensing that something has just shifted. As Irina faces him from afar, Chrome asks what business she has with him. Shea anxiously asks Chrome what just happened, and Chrome realizes Irina cast a high-grade spell without a single chant. Chrome accuses Irina of trying to silence them exactly as she did Vance, saying she pretended to listen before striking first and noting the hidden technique she used. Irina keeps smiling and coolly asks what he is talking about. Chrome raises two fingers and says there are two things they need to know. He reveals the first, declaring that, no matter what attacks Irina uses, they will never reach him. He then begins the second warning, stating that anyone who steps within 10 meters of him will die instantly. Chrome reacts in confusion, then coldly tells them to move back, warning that if they die this easily, it will only inconvenience him. The knights refuse to yield, saying they swore to protect the Saintess and will not obey a word until they understand what he wants. Chrome gives Shea a direct order to destroy every guard's weapon as a warning, while the knights insist they do not fear for their own lives. Shea accepts the command instantly and launches forward without the slightest hesitation. The armed knights steel themselves and swing their weapons as she closes the gap. Shea tears through them in an instant, shattering their weapons before they can stop her. As fragments scatter through the air, Shea warns them not to block someone else's path again. The onlookers panic, admitting they could not follow her movements at all, and wondering who these people really are. In the stunned silence, someone can only think of them as monsters. Chrome reminds them they have now seen it with their own eyes, then declares that anything within a 10-meter radius that opposes him will be judged the same and destroyed. Shea all of a sudden seizes the Saintess and drags her away as voices nearby cry out for her in panic. Holding the Saintess in a threatening grip, Shea coldly warns her not to try anything suspicious or the consequences will be severe, while the Saintess goes rigid with fear. Shea announces that if even one person comes near, she will make sure the Saintess dies, and orders everyone to clear the path if they value the woman's life. The crowd falls into terrified silence, and all that remains is a shaken breath sharply. As Shea stands at a distance with the hostage, panic floods the crowd and screams erupt in every direction. A man desperately reaches out and shouts for the Saintess while Shea keeps forcing her through the chaos. Shea escapes on horseback with the Saintess, driving forward at full speed as they flee the scene. The horse carries them to a remote church, where Shea arrives with the Saintess still locked in her grasp. In the dark interior, the Saintess nervously asks what they intend to do with her. Trapped inside the church, the Saintess demands to know who they are and what they want. In the dim church, the cloaked figure steps forward and questions their own identity. The Saintess stares in shock as the figure suggests she should know very well who this is. The figure reveals himself as Chrome, and the Saintess struggles to believe it because she had been certain he was gone back then. Chrome declares that he survived, and says that because of them, he gained a certain power. As he advances, Chrome tells the Saintess there has been enough talk about him and that now it is time to hear her judgment. The atmosphere grows increasingly difficult to manage. Chrome coldly says he will listen and orders her to speak. He demands the truth first, asking why she chose him as a sacrifice and what her real motive was when she asked him to marry her that day. Chrome presses harder, making sure she understands exactly how his skill works. Collapsed on the floor, the Saintess is left speechless as Chrome states that with that same power he killed Creato too. As she remembers that Riat was killed just days earlier, the Saintess realizes in shock that Chrome truly was the one behind it. Chrome tells her to use her perception spell, reminding her that as a high priestess, she should be able to see his darkness. She tries to look closer, then freezes as confusion instantly twists into terror. Staring at the cloaked figure wrapped in ominous power, She breaks down in disbelief and wonders how anyone could survive carrying that much darkness alone. The tension makes the moment unsteady to stay in. Chrome asks if she finally understands how the curse works, explaining that just as Yuno needed enough light to defeat the Demon Lord, he gained an equal amount in the form of darkness. From the floor, she admits she was wrong and says it was all because of them. Chrome cuts her off and says he does not want excuses, only the truth. As she kneels before the altar in fear, a harsh command forces the words out of her. With sweat pouring down her face, the Saintess finally reveals that it involved the forbidden art known as the Chains of Despair. She explains that the ritual absorbed the target's hatred and despair, transformed it into darkness, and then converted that darkness into light for the chosen person. She says Valeri described it that way himself, and admits they used him to create the darkness that let Yuno obtain the light he needed. Looking down in shame, she reveals they decided to drive him even deeper into despair, so the darkness inside him would grow before they acted. She says he was chosen because Valeri and Yuno specifically proposed it, though she does not know what truly lay behind that decision. Chrome coldly ends that subject and moves to his next question. The Saintess panics as Chrome asks if she planned to betray him from the very beginning, and she instantly denies it. He reminds her that on the very night he proposed to her, she went to Yuno's room and was turned away, while she cries out that she truly cared for Chrome. Still kneeling on the floor, she insists she had a dream she wanted to make real too. She admits she did not want to remain a mere priestess and instead wanted to become a legendary saintess, believing only Yuno, the hero who gained the light, could make that happen. Chrome pushes further and asks if that alone was enough for her to abandon him and choose Yuno so easily, while she falters and cannot answer. The Saintess breaks down and insists she was not thinking clearly back then. The situation becomes uncomfortable. Chrome explodes in fury and cuts through her words as she desperately insists she had always cared for him deeply. In the next instant, a dark strike crashes into her and sends her body skidding across the floor. Chrome coldly tells Shea that her arms are next, and Shea obeys at once. From a distance, the Saintess begs him to stop while Chrome mocks her, asking if he really once fell for the same tricks she tried earlier. In panic, she tries to cast herself as the victim and claims the encounter had been forced on her. She keeps screaming through tears and accuses him of harming and drugging her, desperately trying to throw the blame onto him. Before her lies can settle, another brutal blow slams into her and hurls her away again. As she writhes on the ground, Chrome says he has spent the past 2 years gathering information on her and reminds her how busy she has been scheming, manipulating others, and arranging assassinations. Chrome glares at her and says everything she did was calculated, accusing her of using anyone she could for her own goals, and bitterly wonders how he ever trusted someone like her. As old memories blur together, Chrome realizes lies and truth have become impossible to separate, and bitterly admits part of him still wants to believe she was not always like this. When she panics and begs not to be killed, Chrome cuts her off and says he has no desire to hear another word. Crawling across the floor, Irina desperately tries to stop him by suggesting they return to how things were before, making the moment even more uncomfortable as she tries to sway him. She keeps pressing, asking if he still has feelings for her and insisting money means nothing, trying every angle she can to pull him back. Chrome coldly rejects her, says the woman before him is nothing like the Irina he knew, and warns her not to come near him again if she wants to live. He reminds her that they were once close, but says that means nothing now unless she accepts 2 conditions. From across the church, Chrome gives his first demand and orders her to confess what the hero's party did. He specifically tells her to record, in her own voice, the full truth of what happened 2 years ago, noting that a supreme priestess should be more than capable of preserving such testimony. Irina looks up in shock as he adds that her power should allow a voice recording that cannot be forged, and she shakily agrees. After confirming the first demand was met, Chrome coldly moves to the second condition, and Irina reacts in confusion as something activates between them. Lying on the floor in shock, Irina hears Chrome order her to become his servant. Chrome explains that he can turn a target into one of his own kind. Irina stares back as he clarifies that a servant is simply someone who exists while sharing a portion of his power, and she hesitantly asks if that is what he wants from her. Chrome reminds her with bitter calm that serving the man she betrayed should be humiliating for her, and he calls her by name without mercy. Though shaken and drenched in sweat, Irina says she understands and agrees to serve Chrome while sounding stunned that he truly means it. As she clings to survival, Irina decides she will bow as many times as needed, accepting that she must endure anything to save herself. Irina then appeals to his power, asking whether someone changed by him would be spared from permanent damage, and whether that would also mean they could no longer hurt him. Chrome grants it, declaring that Irina will become one of his kind, while a system-like notice confirms that Irina Valim's familiar status has been set. The transformation begins as the ritual effect locks into place. Chrome declares that she is now one of his kind and orders Irina to swear loyalty, and she shakily addresses him in submission. Irina lowers herself and says she is entirely at his disposal. Chrome accepts her as his servant and states that he will grant her power. He notes that losing her limbs must be inconvenient and says he will at least restore her mobility, leaving Irina stunned as she hurriedly thanks him. Chrome tells his kin, Irina, to accept his blessing. As he reaches out, Chrome announces that the skill he is about to give her is called beastification. The transformation starts violently, and Irina panics as her form changes in a way she cannot comprehend. Irina lets out a desperate scream as the agonizing change tears through her. The process ends with Irina twisted into a monstrous form, and Chrome coldly declares that this will be her repentance. While Irina is left speechless in her altered state, Chrome orders her to go out, continue acting as a proper remnant saintess, and carry out the Demon Lord's work for the people's sake. Irina is hurled forward in agony as the beastification continues, her screams echoing through the church while Chrome watches without mercy. Irina desperately calls to Chrome and clings to the word beastification as she realizes the skill he gave her is still changing her. Chrome explains that the transformation leaves her mind intact but turns her into a monster, with pain so constant she will suffer endlessly without even being allowed to die, and Irina breaks down saying she hates it and does not want this. As the change warps her further, Irina panics over losing her appearance and identity, and the scene becomes even more harrowing. Through tears and rage, Irina insists that she is the Saintess Irina and refuses to accept what she has become. In her monstrous state, Irina laments that a glorious future was supposed to await her, that the world was meant to praise her and kneel before her, and she cannot understand why everything has collapsed. Irina can do nothing but scream as despair and pain finally swallow her whole. Chrome raises a round object and calmly says they should deal with this first. Shea approaches and calls out to Chrome, and he turns to ask what she wants. Shea asks him directly whether Irina was someone he once loved. As Shea looks back at him and repeats whether Irina was someone he once loved, Chrome reacts with visible surprise before answering. Chrome reflects that he once dreamed that, if the day came when he and Irina stood here together, he would be the happiest man alive, but now he says it is all over. He adds that whatever feelings he once had for her are already gone. While gripping the object in his hand, Chrome recalls that Irina had once saved him. Shea gently says that she wants to help him too, if she can. Chrome tells her that hearing words like that is enough for him. He then counts 4 left as he holds the object and shifts his focus to what comes next. Declaring that his journey continues, Chrome is asked where they are heading now. Shea holds the object and hears Chrome say that the next target is his former magic master. Chrome reveals that the one they are going after is the sage, Valeri. 2 women discuss the escaped test subject, identifying her as the girl in a maid outfit and sounding amused that she managed to get away. One of them rushes forward and complains that she had been planning to use the girl for her own purposes. She coldly dismisses the loss, saying it is a waste but claiming it does not really matter. She adds that the girl is going to die anyway, showing complete disregard for her fate. From behind a barrier, a terrified victim begs for mercy and forgiveness, while another voice curses them in despair. A dark-robed figure listens to the screams with satisfaction and says the suffering is good, demanding even more pain, sorrow, and despair. The figure explains that magic is the art of piercing the darkness of the human heart, and says that this pain and despair will deepen his research. Standing before trapped victims, he declares that his pursuit of the ultimate forbidden spell is close to completion, and that the day he achieves his goal is near. The scene shifts to a forested area near the border between the Kingdom of La Luva and the Principality of Liju. As they travel through the area, Shea asks whether this is the place, and Chrome confirms that Valeri has facilities hidden somewhere around there. Chrome recalls that Valeri often spoke about research facilities he owned in the past, while noting that a few days have passed since the saint is banished from people's lives. As they move through the forest, Chrome states that they are heading toward their next target, Valeri the Sage. Chrome warns Shea not to stray far from him, explaining that he chose this dangerous route to avoid being seen, though he currently senses no immediate danger nearby. Shea obediently agrees and stays pressed close to Chrome. Chrome awkwardly clarifies that she really does not need to stay so close to him like that. Shea smiles warmly, while Chrome wonders if she is trying to comfort him after what happened with Irina. A sudden scream cuts through the area, and Chrome right away calls out to Shea. Shea says she will go check on it, and Chrome allows it on the condition that she returns at once if the situation becomes dangerous. Left behind, Chrome grows irritated that his body still refuses to move properly at a time like this. The source of the disturbance erupts ahead as flames and violent motion rip through the scene. The tense moment stretches on, refusing to give anything away. The atmosphere stays charged as not a word is said. The silence between them grows harder and harder to ignore. The weight of the moment lingers with no relief in sight. The moment holds firm with no clear shift in sight. The situation remains unresolved as the pressure keeps climbing. The tension carries forward without ever breaking. The scene stays frozen in uneasy stillness. The interaction leaves both of them visibly shaken. The scene continues beneath a cloud of quiet tension. The maid explains that she escaped when she found an opening, but warns that the scent she gives off grows stronger at night and draws monsters like the one they just encountered. Crumb studies her uneasily and realizes it would be reckless for her to be alone in these woods with such a curse, then starts to ask if she had been trying to do something reckless. He directly questions whether she was throwing herself at the monsters because she wanted to be killed. The scene becomes too charged to stay calm in. She recalls that many innocent people became victims of the curse and were killed for nothing more than cruel experiments. She confesses that she fears the curse itself, the people tied to it, and the sorcerer who cast it on her because he still remains free and could return at any moment. Hearing her mention that sorcerer, Chrome pauses in surprise and locks onto that detail. Chrome firmly tells her to stop worrying and come over, insisting that his skill will destroy any enemy that comes near them. Another girl jumps in to reassure her that Chrome's abilities are the real thing, while the maid hesitates but listens. Chrome presses harder and demands to know exactly who this sorcerer is that placed the spell on her. The maid panics and says she cannot reveal it, fearing that the man behind it would kill her if she spoke. Chrome tells her her options are limited, and says that if she wants to survive and break free of that man, she needs to ask for help. Fighting back tears, she realizes that if she wants to live, she will have to fight. With visible fear, she reveals that the one who performed the technique on her was the very person responsible for her condition. The other girl right away identifies him as a member of the hero's party, Valeri Sama the Sage, and Chrome confirms that it was him. They explain that they had actually been searching for his location until they found her, then ask Yulin to guide them to where he is. The girl promises that she and Shea will handle everything, and says they may even find a way to undo the technique used on Yulin. Shaken and sweating, Yulin hesitates as she begins to say that if she takes them to the laboratory, then something important may change. Overcome by doubt, she falters and silently struggles with whether she is even allowed to hope. Looking toward them with uncertainty, she asks if her body can ever return to normal. Chrome says there is a chance her condition can improve, but makes it clear that nothing is guaranteed. The discomfort between them rises without warning. She admits she wants to meet her friends and the people from her village one more time. Yulin looks to Chrome and Shea, hesitates, then finally makes her choice. Through tears, but with resolve, she declares that she will guide them to Valeri's laboratory. Shea instantly promises that she will protect Yulin no matter what. Chrome calmly says he is not worried about enemy attacks, because his skills can nullify anything within 10 meters. Yulin awkwardly admits that the enemy is not what worries her, but the fact that Chrome is a man. Chrome looks thrown off as Shea dryly says Yuline is being shy, while he asks if they really think he would do something improper. Shea points out that he still carries the same bias, adding that her sister used to say men can be troublesome that way. Yulin flusters and blurts out that Chrome really did handle her before, but quickly adds that it was absolutely not like that and wonders why she even said it. Elsewhere, someone calls out to Micah and remarks that Valeri has been summoning her a lot lately. Micah calmly denies it and insists she is not called any more than the others. The others push back, saying that among the 7, Micah is the one called to Valeri's room most often, and praise her as especially exceptional. The narration introduces them as the 7 apprentices of Valeri the Wise, while Micah is told she's obviously the master's favorite. It is revealed that all 7 apprentices are gifted young men skilled in magic, and the others crudely paint them as Valeri's favorite attendants. One of them guesses that everyone is just trying to win more of Valeri's favor so they can be taught deeper magical secrets. Another insists that he is different and claims that his devotion to their master is genuine. He goes even further, boasting that he has earned more favor than anyone else in questionable ways, and surpasses the others in looks and in Valeri's affection. Micah grows uneasy at the commotion and quietly wonders what is going on. A warning rings out that someone is approaching the lab, instantly putting the group on edge. A violent blast rips through the area, announcing the intruder's sudden assault. The people inside jolt in shock as the strike reaches them, and chaos explodes at the entrance. One of them stares in disbelief and says the whole situation is absurd. As they assess the breach, one demands to know what is happening, while another is stunned that the intruders came straight through the front door so easily. A stern figure steps forward, calls for the master, and urgently announces that intruders have broken in. He reports that every magic trap and even the monsters assigned as guards were utterly wiped out by the attackers. Realizing the enemy used darkness, he is shaken and admits that this power has reached a level beyond even his own. The others protest that the man they suspect should not even be alive, while he grimly concludes that merely invoking darkness and truly mastering it are worlds apart, making him realize who the intruder must be. Another person right away asks the master to leave the matter to him and insists on dealing with it personally. The master is urged to let everyone go together, as they warn that the intruder is no ordinary enemy and may be too much for one person alone. They beg for trust and confidently promise that if they fight together, they will defeat the intruder. A sudden alarm announces an intruder, and the master right away turns toward the warning. Valeri's followers rush in to block the path, declaring that they will not let the enemy advance another step and that they are ready to kill for Valeri's sake. When asked who they are, Yurin explains that they are Valeri's apprentices, the ones tasked with controlling the test subjects. A shaken girl reveals that these people destroy and kill the subjects as if they were nothing but tools, calling them monstrous. Hearing that, the master quietly acknowledges the accusation and says she understands. She then asks what they have done to the subjects in a lab and what they truly think of those people, catching them off guard. The apprentices defend themselves by saying there is no reason to grow attached to mere experimental material and claim the subjects should be grateful to contribute to the advancement of magic and research. After hearing their excuse, the master coolly asks if that is all they wanted to say, then answers with a quiet understanding laced with judgment. Valeri's apprentices attack together, proudly unleashing fire and wind magic to stop the intruder. The master calmly praises their skill, noting that they can already use advanced fire and wind magic without chanting and saying they are likely better mages than Valeri was back when she still traveled with the hero's party. Even so, the master says this is exactly what she would expect from Valeri's apprentices, though the thought trails off with icy disappointment. The combined blast surges toward the group, flooding the corridor as the three of them stand firm against the incoming attack. Unshaken, the master narrows her eyes and directly demands to know where Valeri is. A reply explains that all records related to spell research are managed by Valeri, and Yurin says she hoped those records would reveal how to break the curse on her. The master presses further and asks where the memory orbs are kept. Panicking, one apprentice reveals that they are on the lowest level of the laboratory, in a place called the Wise Man's Chamber. The same apprentice hurriedly adds that Valeri is also in the middle of a ritual, 2 doors away from the Wise Man's Chamber, and the master quietly says she understands. The moment he gets what he needs, the master coldly declares that the apprentice can die now, leaving him horrified as he protests that he was not as guilty as Valeri. Yulin nervously begs him to stop treating her as if she is no different from the others, clearly shaken as she tries to make him listen. The master coldly asks whether Valeri ever thought she would be forgiven for taking so many lives as test subjects. Yulin reports that the terrifying Valeri apprentice who appeared out of nowhere has vanished without a trace, but the master says he does not really care who they are. The hidden apprentice finally speaks up in confusion and cautiously asks who he is. The girl introduces herself as Micah, one of Valeri's apprentices, and demands to know why he came there. With a sharp grin, the master says he is no friend of Valeri and that he is simply there on business. Micah tightens her grip and says that, judging by the situation, this is clearly not peaceful business. One apprentice defends Valeri by calling her a brilliant mage whose magical techniques greatly advance the civilization of the world. Micah grimly adds that those achievements were built through repeated human experimentation, exposing the cruelty beneath the praise. Even so, the apprentice insists it is a noble sacrifice for the world, while the master dismisses that excuse as nothing more than selfish thinking. The apprentice insists that is not true, saying she deeply respects Valeri, believes in her, and hopes to succeed her someday. The master coldly suggests that the real reason is that she is personally attached to Valeri. Flustered and shaken, she denies merely respecting him and blurts out that it may be dependence, confusion, or selfish attachment instead. As she reels in embarrassment, the master remarks that the rumors about Valeri's misconduct may have been true, while Shea asks if they should chase him and he says there is no need because he will not threaten them. The master cuts the moment off and says they need to keep moving. He rushes ahead with the others, pressing forward urgently as he reminds them they are in a hurry. They enter a grim chamber lined with sealed figures as desperate voices seem to beg for forgiveness and salvation. Seeing the captives, Shea realizes they are test subjects just like her. The narration explains that stronger spells require stronger negative emotions, so the captives are being forced to suffer for that purpose. The master quietly calls Shea's name, and she lowers her head and answers him respectfully. Shea all of a sudden springs into action, shattering the seals around the chamber as the captives recoil in shock. Chrome orders everyone who can move to get going fast, explaining that they have already destroyed every trap along the route they came through, and the survivors thank him while weakly agreeing. As the others begin evacuating, Chrome notices something and turns back with a tense expression among the rows of crystal-like prisons. Seeing one particular sealed figure, he is hit by the sight and realizes it may be something deeply familiar. Chrome identifies the image as the Chain of Darkness, a spell discovered in ancient ruins around 2 years earlier. A dark-robed man appears and coldly asks why Chrome is still alive. Chrome right away recognizes the man as Valeri. Chrome sharply asks whether Valeri is upset that his apprentice is still alive. Valeri is caught off guard by the wording, asks what Chrome means by that, and then demands to know how Chrome is still alive at all. Staring him down, Valeri presses further and asks how Chrome obtained the power of darkness. Chrome tells Valeri to answer one thing first if he wants that information, asking how he can remove the trace of darkness from urine. Valeri reacts in surprise to urine's name, then identifies her as the little girl standing nearby. Valeri says the records on the trace of darkness are stored in orb number 327, noting that its number matches the girl and tells Chrome to take it if he wants. Valeri declares that if he can obtain Chrome's darkness, none of his other research will matter anymore. With growing obsession, Valeri says darkness is the pinnacle of magic, the goal he has chased for over 40 years and still failed to reach. Valeri then demands that Chrome explain how he gained the power of darkness, but Chrome cuts him off and says he has one more question first. Chrome asks what the power of darkness really is. Valeri admits he has not fully solved that mystery, though he seems to have grasped part of it. Valeri begins explaining that there was once a civilization in this world unlike the one they know today.